Frederick Pickleson. I never imagined I would see you in my office. According to our records, you've had straight A's in all of your preschool classes, you've never been tardy, and have always had good conduct. It's nearly a perfect record. Well, except for this one day where you missed school for, I don't know, your balloons got caught in your grandmother's electric scooter?
Yes, ma'am.
Frederick, why do you even wear these balloons?
Well, you know my mom, right? Mama Rita Mae Pickleson, 7-time winner of the annual cow competition at the state fair. Yeah, she's the biggest worrier on the block. She worries about everything, especially when it comes to me. My mom gets so worried that I don't drink enough water, so I have these ridiculous contraptions on my head so my head can hold water bottles and straws so that I can drink water at any time to stay hydrated. She gets so worried that I might trip and fall, so she wraps this sleeping bag around my waist. And this bag here, yeah, well, I have to keep it with me at all times just in case there's an emergency. There's an extra pair of clothes, there's a toothbrush, there's a plunger, a flashlight, some emergency food that can last me up to 7 days. There's 5 cell phones, a solar panel, and an air mattress. And if that wasn't enough, she also packed me 4 extra lunches, just in case I got extra hungry. Of course, with all this stuff she packs me, she ties balloons to all my stuff so it would help lighten the load. I'll admit, she's pretty creative, but it's embarrassing.
Well, Frederick, you failed to mention your bug collection that so happened to be in Johnny Johnson's backpack and lunch. Not only were they found nibbling on his ham sandwich, but they were found crawling all in his hair and clothes, causing him to jump around as if he was in some sort of awful line dance. Did you know that it took all 5 of our school nurses to help him get that infestation under control?
I know what it looks like, ma'am, but...
Yes, it looks like a case of bullying that will force me to write you up to pick up trash and scrub the toilets with a toothbrush for the next 2 weeks. Not to mention, this could ruin your nearly perfect record.
Bullying? This isn't a case of bullying. If anyone... I know what it's like to get bullied. And trust me, I would never do anything to make anyone feel as awful as I do when it's done to me.
All right, Frederick. If you're not the bully in this situation, then would you be so kind as to tell me what happened?
Yes, ma'am. It all started this morning when Carl was seen with Johnny.
But why do I have to do that?
You wanted to hang out with me and my friends, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but what does me eating a chocolate-covered grasshopper prove that I'm good friend material?
I'm sorry. I don't think I heard you correctly. Did you say you were eating chocolate-covered grasshoppers?
Excuse us, the adults are talking.
Adults? What adults?
The ones right in front of you, duh.
What are you even talking about? We're barely 10.
You may barely be 10, but I hit double digits, baby. You don't see me drinking out of juice boxes anymore. I moved on to Starbucks Frappuccinos. Now, what was I saying? Oh, that's right. To answer your question, Carl, you eating chocolate-covered grasshoppers will prove whether or not you can keep up with us toughies, not fluffies.
I'm sorry, but what does Johnny and his friends call themselves?
Toughies, not fluffies.
Why?
Because they want everyone to know just how tough they really are. They claim that they aren't afraid or fearful of anything.
But why?
Well, you rarely ever see cowards or scaredy cats around the popular kids. They rarely ever get noticed to make a sports team, get invited to any birthday parties, or are aggressive enough to get to the front of the line at lunch to not get the crusty sides of the meatloaf. It always seems like it's the kids who appear strong, brave, or courageous that always get whatever they want.
But we know that's not true.
No, not exactly, but Carl fell for that lie.
How?
Well, by him trying to be friends with the toughies, not fluffies. All you have to do in order to become one is prove that you aren't afraid of anything.
You know this will prove whether or not you have stage fright.
I guess that makes sense.
What? What are you doing?
What does it look like I'm doing? I'm trying to show everyone that I'm toughy, not a fluffy.
Well, it looks like what you're doing is getting peer pressured into eating bugs for friends you don't even need.
Bugs? That's nothing. I even got Barney Busterman to sneeze on me.
The kid who always overproduces mucus?
Yep, that's the one. I also went on Steel Force 7 times.
The tallest and fastest roller coaster in town? But you would never go on that with me when we've gone to the park.
That's because your balloons would fly away and your mom would never let that happen. So there's also like a shortage on helium.
Okay, that's true.
Oh, do you know what else that I did that's even crazier than anything else I said? I petted my grandmother's cat.
But you're highly allergic to cats.
Yeah, but I did it anyway.
But why in the world would you do that? Much less do any of those other things.
To show Johnny and the toughies and not the fluffies crew that I'm not afraid of anything.
Are you serious? You're falling for a lie. Don't you remember what our Sunday school teacher taught us this past weekend?
And what did you learn from church on Sunday?
We learned about Moses and how against all odds, he was an Israelite baby who was being raised in the home of Pharaoh's daughter in Egypt. Sure, he was lucky to be living there with royalty since the rest of all the Israelites were slaves to the Egyptians, but no matter what, he just wasn't one of them. Instead, God had set him apart for his purposes rather than the purposes of the world.
Ah, yes, the book of Exodus. I remember this story. He ends up getting in trouble in Egypt and runs away to a faraway land where he becomes a shepherd.
That's right. And it's there, in this faraway land, where God appears before him in the form of a burning bush. He tells Moses, "Now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt."
Yes, and even when God tells him, "I will be with you," Moses cowers in fear and begins to make excuses as to why he's not the right person for the job. He says, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?"
Yeah, but I don't blame him. Pharaoh and the Egyptians were basically the toughies not fluffies crew. They were completely powerful, full of force, mean, and not fearful of anything. Not to mention, there were a ton of them.
Well, let me ask you this, Frederick. Are you afraid of the toughies not fluffies crew?
Of course I am. It's not fun having my balloons popped by one of them in the hallways, or getting called mean names. But what I've learned from that Sunday that I'm trying to put into practice is to remind myself the truth that just like Moses, God set me apart. He set me apart in this school to not be like everyone else, but instead to be bold and do great things for God.
Don't you think your outfit makes you set apart enough?
Well, yes, but I was talking more so of being spiritually set apart rather than physically set apart.
Do explain.
Sure, I do look different from the toughies not fluffies crew, but I also don't use their tactics to defeat fear. They've tried to muscle their way out to defeat their insecurities or to try and prove that they aren't afraid of anything. But that's not where my boldness comes from. My boldness comes from placing my faith and trust in God and Him alone. He is the one who gives me the strength and the power I need to be set apart and bring glory for Him. If we look back at Moses' story, that's what he did.
Carl, are you gonna seriously make me wait while you talk to this clown?
Well, he needed to talk.
Oh, really? What do you have there, Frederick? Are those your little bug friends?
Yeah, they're ladybugs, butterflies, crickets, snails, caterpillars, and ants. I brought them in for show and tell today.
You know, Carl, one of the most common fears that people have is bugs. Maybe we should do something about it.
You're already making me eat a chocolate-covered grasshopper. What else is there to do?
Destroy these.
Hey, you get your hands off them.
But what is this going to prove?
Plenty of things. Not only is it gonna prove that you're not afraid of bugs, but it'll prove that you're not fearful to step up and do what needs to be done. Think of yourself as taking on the role of a hero.
Carl, please don't hurt them. I've had some of those insects for years.
Yeah, Johnny. I don't think I can do this.
What? Are you chicken?
No. It's just I don't want to hurt Friedrich's bugs.
Chicken. Looks like you're a fluffy after all.
Johnny, you and your crew need to stop right now. Carl doesn't have anything to prove to you or anyone else.
What was that, Frederick? Do you seriously want to say that when your bug collection is in my hands?
I'm not afraid of you, Johnny. I'm not afraid of any scary situation since I put my faith in God and He gives me the strength to overcome my fears.
Oh, is that so?
Yes. So sure, you may have my bug collection in your hands, but I'll probably cry if you hurt them. I'll most likely be upset that I'll get a bad grade in class because I'll have nothing to show for show and tell. But I can't, and I won't live in fear.
You stood up to Johnny Johnson?
Of course I did. What was there to be afraid of when my faith wasn't in myself or my ability, but in God alone? And that's what Moses did. Don't you remember? Eventually, after the burning bush event, he leaves for Egypt, and we see he trusts God fully in every situation he was in. After all the plagues and Moses going up against the head honcho Pharaoh, it was God's power that was shown to the world, and the Israelites were finally set free from slavery. As they were leaving Egypt, they are commanded to camp out by the Red Sea, for God will show his power again to everyone.
Oh yes, that epic and yet very scary battle.
You know what, Frederick? Just because you said those things, I'm gonna prove to you just how tough I am.
Stop, Johnny. Friedrich is right. We don't have to prove that we're not fearful by doing things on our own. When we try to control our things out of our own strength, it just shows that we don't trust God fully and with the very things we are fearful with.
That's it. I've heard enough. Say goodbye to your little bugs, Frederick.
Let me guess. This is where you took your bug collection and poured it on top of Johnny Johnson.
No, I would never do that to anyone. No, what ended up happening was that Carl had a massive sneeze that made him go off balance and fell into Johnny. I guess those germs he got from Bernie got him sick or something, but long story short, Carl knocked Johnny over and the bug collection fell on top of him, covering him in all of my insects.
And that's how the infestation happened.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious. Do you think Johnny learned a valuable lesson about fear today?
I think we all did. Johnny learned that him trying to act tough on his own doesn't actually prove that he's not fearful of anything. Carl learned that he shouldn't be like everyone else since he's set apart. And I learned that faith is following God even when it's scary. It again makes me think back to Moses' story.
That's right. We left it off where the Israelites were camped out at the Red Sea when all of a sudden Pharaoh changes his mind about allowing them freedom. He then demands 600 of his best officers to go after the Israelites to bring them back to Egypt.
Yeah, and the Bible tells us that the Israelites were terrified. Where were they supposed to go? One side was the Red Sea, and the other side was the Egyptians coming for them. But then we see God move. Even in their fears, He was their provision. They simply needed to trust and put their faith in Him to be their salvation. At this point, Moses raises his staff, he stretched out his hand over the sea. The sea was divided so that the Israelites could walk on dry ground. And they did. As the Egyptians pursued them, God confused their army as they declared, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." And in that moment, God tells Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians." And sure enough, Moses trusted God and did what was commanded of him. The Egyptians attempted to save themselves, but the water flowed back into place and covered Pharaoh and his entire army. And none of them survived.
All because Moses and the Israelites' faith was in God and Him alone.
and so is mine. If God can part the waters in one of the scariest showdowns ever and allow for his people to walk on dry land, there's nothing too hard for God in my scary situations. All I must do is not trust that I can overcome my scary situations by myself, but instead place my full faith in God and him alone, since he cares for me. He is my provider and my salvation.
Well then, it looks like I won't be sending you to detention after all. In fact, I want to thank you for being an encouragement to others who may deal with fear. Continue to put your faith in God and be courageous because of him. Trust me when I say we need more kids like you in our schools.